publisher and CEO at CUInsight.com, and I am bringing you a 3 questions video interview today with a really special guest. I am so excited to have joining me Jordan Gackowski. We are talking about a lot of important things for credit unions. We're talking about how to thwart social engineering attacks at your credit union. Really, really important. Jordan is the senior sales engineer at Adlumin. Thank you so much for joining, Jordan.
Hey, Lauren, good to be here.
Well, let's dive right in. So we're talking about strategies to thwart social engineering attacks for your credit union. What are those strategies that credit unions can adopt to really safeguard against cyber attacks like phishing and pretexting?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's interesting. So I think most credit unions, most financial institutions have good anti-fraud for their members, right? On the public facing side. And so what I talk to people about is do the same thing internally, right? When you're doing do awareness training, test people and make it tailored to you. I always joke around like if I send you a fake QR code for a free pizza and you scan it, yeah, I'll send you feedback and say, hey, you fell for that and you weren't supposed to do that. But a free pizza is not necessarily tuned towards fight. Like that's not a financial pretext, and it's not maybe the most appropriate way to do that. So don't just tick the box. Like invest in that program. Think about how you're going to deliver it, and come up with something crafty. Different business units maybe get different tests. Don't just give everybody the same thing at once. So that's one. The other one, two-factor authentication, right? If somebody falls for a phishing attack, make sure that username and password doesn't get them anywhere. And I'd say in this day and age, two-factor authentication is mandatory everywhere. Couple little incident response plan. Have an incident response plan, walk through it, plan it out. So if there's other, if you have other controls in place and they don't work and you do have to react, right? How bad can it be? What's the worst case scenario? And are we in a position to react and do something about that? Because there's all kinds of little things you find that you didn't know that you needed to have. Like, is our public affairs department involved in a breach? Right? Is our legal department involved in a breach? Like those are people you might not invite to the table until you realize, oh, like there's a law that says we have to tell everybody now. I wonder how we're going to do that, right? So walk through that stuff, figure it out. Continuous monitoring and improvement. And the last one I'll comment on is I know a lot of the credit unions out there, either you like use the ASAT or the Intrex or something like that. And I know a lot of you I talk to don't like doing it. But embrace that, right? Look for those types of tools to something that you can use to enable continuous improvement and measure yourself over time. It's not just something you do occasionally, quarterly, every 6 months, a year, whatever. Tick the box. Okay, I did my ASET. I'm done. Actually embrace those types of tools and show somebody, hey, look, I found this problem, I fixed this problem, now we're better because of it. Don't just grumpily fill out the form and send it back, right? There's a little bit more to it than that, and those types of things are out there for a reason. You don't always like them, but they are helpful.
It sounds like really planning in advance is the key. Having that strategy, having the incident plan, all of those things can really set the credit union up for success. I'm curious too, in this day and age, a lot of credit unions are collaborating with external partners and vendors. How do you recommend they really ensure that the storage and transmission of sensitive data is super secure?
So obviously before because we have to do this, so Adlumin has to do this with credit unions all the time. Like we have a full due diligence package that we'll hand over to somebody before we do business with them. And it shows like, these are the controls we have in place, all that stuff. Do your due diligence, right? Know who you're dealing with and how you're going to transmit that data. And I think a lot of these things are, on the one hand, I think this is a mature space. Like financial institutions have been trading information with people for years, and most of that's encrypted end to end. You know who they are, you validate who they are before you send it. Like all that stuff is in place. But if you introduce a new party into that, make sure you during a vendor assessment and due diligence, test those things. Don't, if to an extent, right? Don't try to hack your vendors. But okay, cool. You gave me your questionnaire. All right, I want to go through and make sure that you have these things. Like you test your own, like I just said on the last questionnaire, right? Or the last question. Like you're evaluating yourself, evaluate them. It's no big deal, but make sure you have that stuff in place. have a data classification program. Like, what are you sending them, and what does it mean? Like, if you have done any sort of evaluation on how much would it cost us if data type X, was exposed. Because there's a cost around it, and that's how you justify protecting it, right? And I think most people want to do what's best for, like, no credit union organization that I know of wants their member data getting leaked and having to deal with that. Obviously, it'd be a pain for you, but I think you want to do the right thing. Monitor and log everything. Right? If you're sending stuff back and forth to a third party, and you know that data is sensitive, and you're not writing down every time. I use the term writing down because I want, but there's logs of that. Where are you putting those logs? Who has access to those logs? Who's monitoring those logs? Right? Did destination IP address that you send critical data to suddenly change? Right? You should know that. Little red light should turn on. Somebody should go look at it, right? Because that's not what we agreed to, but somehow it's still working. You're like, maybe there's something wrong there. Obviously, if you're pulling in data, a lot of those types of things would be like data retention, security. It's encrypted at rest. Is it backed up when it's in an encrypted format? Is it backed up in an encrypted format at the other end where you send it to them, or is it just sitting in a tape in a box somewhere and anybody can come pick it up? Those types of things are things to think about. Some of these questions go, oh yeah, make sure everything's encrypted. You're like, if you're not encrypting stuff that you send in transit, like I can't surf the web without it being encrypted nowadays, right? I think that's all a given at this point in time.
Absolutely. Well, we hear a lot about artificial intelligence, even more over the last 6 to 12 months. How do you think credit unions can really leverage advanced technologies like AI, like machine learning, to enhance their cybersecurity posture?
So this goes back to the first question. So like when you're doing the like phishing simulation and training people, you can use AI to do that for sure, right? Like that's always fun to play. I've been playing around with like some scripts and stuff to have an AI generate a pretext phishing email for me, and that's because that's what the bad guys are doing, right? The days of getting a misspelled email with a bunch of bad grammar and trying to get you to give your password, you're like, all right, delete, whatever, right? So if you have back to like, are you monitoring those transactions? Great. What are you using to look at that transaction? Because there's a lot better ways to do that than there were in the past, and it's changing every day. So AI, machine learning, kind of buzzwords, but they are much more efficient than a human being generally at looking at massive amounts of data and figuring that out. And whether you're going to take an AI tool and point it at your own data, or that comes from a vendor, and they have that built in. These are questions you should be asking. User behavior analytics, applying that to individual humans or entities. I always say, like, I can look at, Lauren. You log in every day. You produce content. You post it. You send some emails. Like, look at your Instagram, probably. I don't know. Like, and I can plot out what you do every day at 8 a.m. and be fairly certain that it's the same, or it's going to look very similar every single day. And then I can build a profile about you, right? And then, okay, if it deviates, I don't know if it's bad or not, but it's different. And I can call somebody's attention to it, or a tool can do that, right? And that's great. You can do that for users. You can do that for machines. You can do that for IP address. You have a specific IP address on your network, and it does the same thing every single day. Like, it's easy to build a model around something like that. And those are the things, like, to take that bubble out of, like, am I just looking at my firewall logs and saying, oh, that one's bad, I should block it? Or am I taking another step and looking at my data and using that? I can apply that to an application. Somebody's using PowerShell on your network, right? It probably is the same handful of 3, 4, 5 people. They probably run on the same machines at the same time of day, over and over and over again. If an accountant or a teller runs PowerShell, you should know about it immediately, because the human shouldn't be doing it and the executable shouldn't be doing it. Like, you can pinpoint that using like these types of like AI tools really, really quickly. You're probably already using them in some of the anti-fraud tools that you subscribe to. Again, back to the first question: really mature in some areas, less mature in others. And then, are you reporting on it, and how are you bringing that data up? Because the big one I always joke around, like, if you deploy a tool, it notices something weird, it tells you about it, and nobody looks at it, you might as well just not even be doing it. Because an alert that goes unanswered is not an alert, because nobody did anything about it, right? You can't get ahead of the bad guys if you just ignore that data. Any sort of threat intelligence that you can bring in, bring that in. ISACs, you belong to CISA. The government feeds good information into the community all the time. You can pay for threat intelligence. If you're paying money for threat intelligence, always look at where you can use that threat intelligence. If you're not operationalizing that intelligence, you're not getting everything out of your investment. Two, it's just like the alerts. Oh, I have threat intelligence. I have a whole box of threat intelligence. Great. What are you doing with it? Right? Can you use that anywhere in your environment? And kind of squeeze as much as you can out of that investment. And the last comment on that, cloud security monitoring. So a trend, and people are catching up to it now, but was like, hey, we're not going to have a data center anymore, or we're going to have a smaller data center footprint. We're just going to put it all in the cloud. And none of your controls and none of your monitoring followed it into the cloud. So when you're, I was talking to a credit union the other day, they have like a couple of things left. Their core is outsourced and it's cloud-based. They're using O365 and Azure. All their servers are up there and stuff now. And now they're like, oh, we need to monitor all that stuff. Just like when all these machines were in our building, like we knew exactly what was going on with them. Now we're not keeping, they're monitoring them. I don't want to talk bad about them, but you can definitely tell they're like, we need to catch up because we're not looking at those as closely as we used to look at them in the past.
Well, so many good insights for credit unions. I think there are so many strategies that you shared that are really critical for credit unions. And what is the saying? An ounce of preparation is worth more than a pound of cure. So doing this all in the front end sounds so critical. Jordan, as we wrap up the conversation, do you have any final thoughts for our audience or final asks of our listeners today?
Talking general security, a lot of it, it's not complicated. But it needs to be done. It's the classic, and I hate sports analogies, but I'll call it basic blocking and tackling, right? If you're not patching your stuff, you're going to get in trouble. If you're not monitoring your users, you're going to get in trouble. If you're not looking at, if a user's account gets compromised, you force them to reset their password in like a very short amount of time, or you waiting. I call it don't do incident response by intern, right? Hey, somebody told me about my account was compromised. You're like, cool, I gave it to the dumb kid who's working here this summer, and he'll get around to it in a week or so, right? You don't want to do that. But these are all things that everybody knows need to be done. And either they make it too hard on themselves, or there's politics or cultural problems or whatever. I was talking to somebody, I'm like, you need to reset your passwords on a regular basis. Users don't like doing that, and I'm like, well, NIST 800 says something different. You should probably be doing that. But a lot of good security comes from good processes and good practices, and just adhering to them, back to enforcing those standards. If you're not holding yourself to the same standard as an IT security professional, you can't expect your users to hold themselves to that same standard. That would be my parting shot. If you want to talk to us about it, feel free to call Adlumin up. I'm an engineer. I hate talking about sales, but I'll introduce you to some salespeople. I'm sure they would love to talk to you. And if not us, anybody else, right? If you need help doing any of these things we talked about and you don't want to talk to me, that's fine. Find somebody to help you, right? It doesn't matter who.
Absolutely. Well, we are going to link to Jordan and his team's contact information at Adlumin for anyone who is interested in getting in touch, learning more about what they can help you do in terms of your cybersecurity. So critical, especially today. Jordan, thank you so much for your time. So great getting to chat with you. And thank you everyone for tuning in today. We will be back again next time.